I think one of the most common questions people ask when they first start getting into Christianity and really trying to dig into their Bible, what Bible should they use? It's a question I've heard multiple times and from multiple people asked multiple different ways, whether they are asking about a specific translation or, I mean, even people that think that you have to. This is a real thought people have. I've had someone ask me this that they felt like they had to read through the King James version before they could go to any other translation. And this is someone who was not familiar with the Bible, was not familiar with King James English, Elizabethan. I think is I'm probably saying that wrong. English, but they felt they needed to read through that. Um, so I thought it would be cool to look at. I put together a list, kind of just my top 5 translations. And I'm not saying the ones that are not on this are bad. I will touch on um I have my top 5 here, and then there are 3 other ones. I only put 2 originally or 1 originally. I will make sure I include those other 2. So we'll go over my top 5 picks, and then we have 3 other ones that I want to mention that I think may be popular for different reasons, that I think you should probably 2, you should steer clear of. 1, I think is okay to read as long as you understand what you are getting into. So number 5, my 5th top choice on Bible translations. And all 5 of these are ones that I do pull out. I do use some more than others, but they're all ones that I use at least on a somewhat regular basis. So, number 5, New King James Version, NKJV. This is one that there are, I think, some pros to it, especially if you are familiar with King James Version. You are going to like this one if you like that old English style of wording, things like that. There are some issues with the King James Version. Not, I'll get into it when I that is one of them I'm going to talk about, but I'll get into that when I get into that. The issues that are there, the new King James Version kind of addresses, and those are not issues anymore in the New King James Version. So if you do like that Old English, if that's what you are familiar with, there's a lot of Bible verses I have memorized in KJV. That's what I grew up reading. I wasn't, my church wasn't like KJV only, but that's just really all that was there. And so that's just, there's verses that I have memorized in KJV, and I cannot memorize them outside of that. So that is a good one if you are familiar with the KJV and you like the KJV. Another positive for this is they do put a very high value on the accuracy. They go back to the original languages. It still maintains commitment to accuracy in the translations, and it seeks to convey the meaning of the original Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek text accurately to contemporary readers. So New King James Version is a solid Bible translation, especially if you're familiar with King James Version. Next translation, my number 4 pick. Number 4 on my top 5 Bible translations you should use for studying is, drum roll, not really, because I don't have that sound effect or any sound effects. Boom, New International Version, NIV. This is one most people are probably familiar with. Now, honestly, I I used to kind of hate on the NIV uh, prior to really understanding what all went into the translation process, and I've seen some of the individuals that worked on that process talk about that and what they went through, and how they went about putting it together. And my tone has changed on the NIV. I used to call it, and I've heard several other people call it, the nearly inspired version. And that is not fair whatsoever. It is a solid translation. It does a good job of kind of going to more commonly spoken English, and it makes it easier for someone that just speaks like kind of contemporary English to understand and to read. Um, the so the NIV is it's known for its clear and easy to understand language, making it easily making it accessible to a wide range. Sorry, trying to read my notes. Making it accessible to a wide range of readers, including those who may not be familiar with traditional religious terminology or archaic language. This is typically one that I will recommend to someone that has no familiarity with the Bible, because it is a good blend of uh, the word for word translations, which we are going to get into some, and the thought for thought translations. So there are kind of two main ways people would go about doing translating. They would take one word, and that one word would correlate with one word. So one word in the Greek would be one word in the English, and they try to stick to that as much as they can. Sometimes they may need to do 2 to 1, whatever. There's a benefit to that. I think there can also be a drawback to that. And there's another type that does a thought for thought. So rather than taking this one word and just translating this to this one word, they would take like, let's look at this whole sentence and see what it says, or this paragraph and see what it says, and they'll kind of like go through and they'll try to still do like a word for word, but they'll put a little more focus on making sure that it flows smoothly in the common English. So NIV um, is good for that. It's known for its clear and easy to understand language, making it accessible to a wide range of readers, including those who may not be familiar with the. I already said that. Never mind. Just kidding. Um, but it's true though. So yeah, NIV is my number 4 pick. Number 3, and this is one I actually I had not read like at all until recently, like within the last couple years. Um, but I have found it's kind of turning into my go-to over in NIV. It kind of fits in that same category of it's the mix between the thought for thought and the word for word. I think it blends those two really really well, and it's just easy to read. It is one of my, like I said, one of my favorite go-tos now. Number 3, there we go, Christian Standard Bible. I have we're getting ready to go over looking at a certain passage in several of these, and I saw Common English Bible right next to Christian Standard Bible, and I combine them because it's late and I'm tired. So that's what we're doing. Christian Standard Bible. I thought that looked wrong when I pulled it up, but it is a good blend, similar to the NIV. It's a good blend of the word for word with the thought for thought. It does a good job of harmonizing those two and putting it into a package that is fairly easy to read. I'm actually looking forward to. I want to get a CSB study Bible. I have a lot of. If I'm just reading verses, a lot of times I'll do that either on my phone or on my computer. A lot of times when I pull my actual Bible out, it's because I'm using like the actual study Bible, and it's got notes and stuff in the margins or below. And I do have uh, right here that gray looking book. That is a Christian Standard Bible, but it is one of my wife's, and it's a Bible that's made for women. The CSB by itself isn't necessarily, but this is definitely targeted towards women. And so I do want to get one that is not, because I'm not. Um, so I want to get one that I think I've got mine on a couple of them, and they're really good. I have really enjoyed reading CSB, which is saying a lot because I typically stick to my top two choices, which are both very heavy word for word translations, but the CSB is it's just I've really enjoyed it. That is one I would recommend to people. Um, Even if you don't have a ton of familiarity with the Bible, I think the CSB is a good one to get in on. The language is easy enough to get in and understand. Number two, number two on my list of top 5 Bible translations is, and this might surprise some people, English Standard Version, ESV. So the ESV is known for its accuracy. It is a word for word translation. It is a very literal translation. So, like we talked about before, there are the word for word and then the thought for thought. The ESV does the word for word. Now, that can cause some problems if you're not aware of that reading it, because there are times where certain passages may read kind of clunky, um, for lack of a better term, I guess, if because they put more of a priority on translating the word for word over um, making it more readable at times in the English. And anyone that knows two languages knows that you don't always have a smooth translation from one phrase to another phrase. You have to kind of do some finessing a little bit. So ESV is a good translation like that. It is, like I said, it's my number two. I'm it's close. I would probably put it close to um, the CSB, because I do think that the CSB, like I said, I've just started reading it the last couple of years and I've really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to getting one. But we're on the CSB, we're on to the ESV, and it's a good one. It's my number two pick. Finally, last but not least, number one, and you should know what it is. If we've gotten this far, you should know what number one is. Oh, I will throw out there too. ESV as kind of a caution. As much as I love it, um, it is used, especially study Bibles. They have a Calvinist leaning to them, so just be aware of that. And if you know Calvinist doctrine, you can spot that in the notes. And like I said, it's still my number two to read, and I use my ESV study Bible a lot. Um, it's probably the most frequent one. I don't have my number one. I don't have a version of it got damaged. I need to get a new one. Like unreadable damage. I need to get a new one. Um, but just be aware there is Calvinist leaning in the study notes on the ESV, or study Bibles on the ESV. So number one, my number one choice of Bibles is New American Standard Bible, NASB, NASBA. Um, it kind of takes a step further beyond the ESV as far as word for word. I would say, and I don't know, maybe scholarship agrees with me, maybe they don't. I'm not so caught up on this, but I view the NASB as the best word for word translation of the Bible. Now, it still has some of the possible problems with being a word for word translation where it can be kind of clunky to read at times. Once you get to where you're familiar with what the passages are saying and stuff like that, it doesn't cause as many problems. You can kind of even if you're not familiar with the passage, you can kind of read your way through and see what's being said. But that can pose a problem for some people. But I still my number one pick is the NASB. I think it is the, in my opinion, the best translation of any, and it's my go-to for most things. So yeah. Um. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the three translations that I kind of have maybe like a red flag on. The first one, people will notice, and I've already talked about this a little bit, the King James Version. I did not include on this list. And there are a few reasons why. So the King James Version is Old English, as everyone's familiar with, and I brought this up when I talked about the New King James Version. The issues that are there that the NKJV addresses is that English as a language progresses. So in the King James Version, there are dead words that don't have any meaning at all to us anymore. But then there's also words that they still are used by us today, but they mean something different than what they meant back then. So that can actually alter your understanding of certain passages and things like that. Now, it doesn't lead to any heresy or anything like that. I don't like. I wouldn't say people that read the KJV are less Christian or anything like that. Um, just be aware that there are issues with it, and I would not read the KJV. I would say it is not a good translation for today. Um, Previously, when it was written, it was a good translation for that time. And the issues that are there are primarily because of the changes in language. So I do want to look at some specifics. Just give a quick example here. Um, so we will look up, and this is 2 Corinthians 12, verse 7. This is a passage talking about Paul's thorn in his flesh. And I bring this up because I'm actually planning on going into. I'm not going to say anything yet. We'll leave it. This has to do with something that I'm prepping for. Teaching video I'm prepping for. But if you look here, 2 Corinthians 12:7 says, "And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh." Okay, so basically what I'm seeing here, and this kind of goes into the teaching I'm going to do. If you read this, there's someone I am going to be looking at who takes this thorn in the flesh passage, and they say that this thorn was given to Paul from Satan because Paul was becoming exalted, and that was a good thing. And so because he's becoming exalted, Satan provided this thorn to keep him from getting there. And so this exalted is a good thing. But and they specifically say that it's a common misconception that this is a bad thing. So let's look at the we can look at all five of my top translations. We'll start with the Christian Standard Bible. Same passage. Especially because of the extraordinary revelations, therefore, so that I would not exalt myself. So this is Paul exalting himself now. Still that same word, exalt, but it's a lot different if he is exalting himself versus God exalting him. Okay, let's look at the ESV. Past it. keep me from becoming conceited. Okay, so that has definitely a negative connotation. So it sounds like this thorn was possibly a positive thing. Um, let's continue on. We already looked at the KJV. NASBA. Because of the extraordinary greatness of the revelations, for this reason, to keep me from exalting myself. So, similar to the CSB, it's about Paul exalting himself to stop him from exalting himself, which again, I think would be a good thing. I haven't looked at this one beforehand. Let's look at the New King James Version. Unless I should be exalted above measure. Okay, so it's similar to the King James Version. Now let's look at last. Which one have we not looked at? NIV. NIV. It's hard to scroll through those sometimes. Because of the surpassingly great revelations, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited. Okay, so we see in these passages that if you look at anything outside of the King James Version and New King James Version, it seems to be a negative thing. But in those, it seems to be positive. Again, this doesn't affect any core doctrine of Christianity. I would say you shouldn't just stick with one translation anyways. You should read multiple. But I do think that's a good example of how you can have such difference in such just by going to different passages. Now, two other ones I want to touch on. The Message and the Passion. So, the Message Bible. It was written by Eugene Peterson. It is not a translation. It is a paraphrase. Eugene Peterson would tell you it is not a translation. It is a paraphrase. He would actually even say, and I have this is something else too, and it kind of leads into the Passion. But because of a project I saw on the Passion translation, I heard the story about Eugene Peterson that a pastor, he was at a church visiting, and a pastor actually used the passage from the pulpit, and it disgusted Eugene Peterson because he said it is not a translation, it is a paraphrase, and it does not hold that level of authority. So a translation is done by hundreds of people. They work together. You may have like 20, 30 people working together on the book of Romans to translate it. Whereas the Message, excuse me, the Message was him kind of doing this. Now, the difference between the Message and the Passion is the Passion does say it's a translation. It's not. It is not good at all. Brian Simmons, the guy that wrote it, actually pushes doctrine that is heretical into the text of the Passion translation. I do not recommend the Passion translation for anybody. I think you should steer clear of it. I do think at some point I may end up going through and doing a video showing some of the differences between, but there are places where he's supposed to have something italicized if he's added it, and there are places where he has added stuff and it's not italicized, so he's trying to pass this off as this is the original. Just really, really not good stuff. I do not recommend anybody read the Passion translation, especially new believers. It's not a translation. I would pick just about anything else over that. So yeah, those are my top 5 translations. and then 3 bonus ones, just a little something extra. Thought you guys might enjoy. So yeah, hope you did enjoy it, and comment below what your favorite translation is. If you think my list is wrong, tell me what your top 5 is, or if you think that I'm wrong on excluding some of those or ones I didn't even bring up, let me know. Thanks. God bless.